Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Amrit, Professor of Pathology. Today we will be taking a class on acute and the chronic renal failure. I'm sure you must have understood about the nephritic and the nephrotic syndrome, which is very, very important to understand why does the patient gets into chronic renal failure. And you have to understand that there are some infections or some drugs, which causes an acute infection, which resolves within a matter of time and the kidney function is restored to its normal function. So that is a stage when we call it as the acute renal failure, when the symptoms, they just, are there or processed within 7 to 10 days. So that is one acute phase. So in case this acute phase keeps on happening and keeps on going for a continuous period of more than 6 months, we start calling it as a chronic renal failure. So acute is for a shorter time, chronic is for a long time. So this deterioration or this malfunction of the kidney, which happens within a matter of hours and which stays for the days together, and with the result there is a failure of the kidney to function at all for these few days. With the result, there is an accumulation of nitrogenous waste products, and then there's a hemostasis disturbance of the fluid and the electrolytes. This is the condition when we call it as the acute renal failure. So how do you diagnose it? You diagnose it by the levels of creatinine levels more than 0.5 milligram per deciliter in less than 72 hours. And then there is a azotemia, accumulation of the nitrogenous waste. And also there's an elevated BUN and creatinine levels, and there's a decreased urinary output. So all these functions are being assessed in a biochemistry department, in which there's a panel in which you ask for urea, creatinine, BUN, and also the output, which is measured in the form of 24 hours, and you call it as a oliguria when you see less than 400 ml amount of urine in 24 hours, and you call it as anuria when there is a less than 100 ml of urine output in 24 hours. So this is very, very important, and you have to understand the definitions. Oliguria means less, and urea means almost to nil. Okay, so this is about the acute renal failure. How common it is seen in 5% of all hospitalized patients, and sometimes in the intensive care unit, sometimes you have a sickle cell anemia, or you are passing through some other infectious conditions, and a renal failure happens because of the injury to the glomeruli, to the tubules, or to the interstitium, and with the result, sometimes if it is an elderly patient, the mortality rate is very high, and in the sepsis patient, the mortality rate is around 75 to 90%. Okay, and especially in the elderly people also, if the patient has already diabetes mellitus, or he is already having some SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, already there's a kidney function, and above that you see acute kidney failure. So sometimes a patient dies. So let's see what are the causes of the acute renal failure. Now, as you can understand, the renal failure can happen because of the pre-renal causes, intrinsic renal causes, and the post-renal causes. Okay, so pre-renal causes means the causes which are happening before the fluid reaches the kidney. Okay, intrinsic is when there is a problem inside the kidney. Post-renal is when there is a problem after the kidney. I mean, the problem may lie in the ureter, or it may lie in the bladder, or somewhere on the passage of the urine outside from the kidney. All right, so in this table you can see intrinsic inside the kidney. When we say there are three types of diseases: the one which affects the glomeruli, the other which affects the tubules, and the third one which affects the interstitium, and also sometimes you can say when it affects the vessels. So this is how we define the different type of injuries inside the kidney. So in the glomeruli, you can see any sort of inflammation, glomerulonephritis. There are so many types of glomerulonephritis. Post-streptococcal is very, very common. Then we have FSGS, and then these are the causes of nephritic syndrome. And then we have lots of nephrotic syndrome also. I think there is one slide, I'll talk about it. And then a thrombosis inside the vessel can also lead to the glomerular diseases. Now, tubular injuries is more like an ischemic injury, and the toxins are the ones. sometimes either from the Clostridium welchi or sometimes from the drugs which causes the tubular injury. Interstitial is most commonly again infections which are very common, which causes the interstitial injury, and sometimes many drugs also causes the interstitial injury. Then we have the vascular diseases. In the vascular diseases we have vasculitis. What are the common vasculitic diseases? Sometimes you see the Goodpasture syndrome, and then we have that medial vessel disease, large vessel disease, Henoch's colon purpura, and then we have the Burgess disease. All these diseases, vasculitis, which affect the vascular system, and even the hypertension is one of the diseases which affects the vessels and which results in the kidney damage. So, as you can see in this picture, these are the kidneys, and pre-renal causes are the ones which are affecting before the kidney. It can, it is affecting the renal artery. Okay, so anything which can occur inside the circulation, whether it is hypovolemia or vomiting or dehydration or hemorrhage. So these are the causes which are the pre-renal causes of kidney failure. Now the intrinsic are the ones which affects the kidney. Then we have the post-renal are the ones which is affecting the urethra or the bladder or ureter or anything which causes the post-renal causes of acute renal failure. So let's talk a little about in detail about the pre-renal causes. Number one is the volume depletion. Number two is a decreased cardiac output. In the volume depletion, as I've told you, there can be diuretics, there can be polyuria. What is poly means? Increased urination. In which disease polyuria happens? Diabetes mellitus, okay, diabetes insipidus, polyuria. Okay, so GI losses, either you have a vomiting or a diarrhea, or you have a loss in the form of Burns or Stevens-Johnson syndrome, or you have a hemorrhage or the pancreatitis, which leads to the volume depletion. So less volume depletion, less circulation to the kidney, and more damage to the kidney. Second cause is the decreased cardiac output. Decreased cardiac output can be because of the heart failure, pulmonary embolism. So all these causes are actually causing the less amount of circulation to the kidneys. So less circulation, more damage. Okay, so less blood supply to the kidney, so more damage. Other causes are acute myocardial infarction, valvular heart diseases, or abdominal compartment syndrome, tense ascites. When there's so much of tense ascites because of the decreased cardiac output, all the fluid, it goes inside the abdominal wall. So with the result, there's a less amount of fluid available for the heart to pump. So that's why they call it as a decreased cardiac output. So the kidney, the one function is to filter the blood. The second function is it should have a supply of blood to function, right? Renal artery will also gives you some oxygen for the kidney to function normally. So if that is not happening, how will the kidney work? So this is the one reason which causes the kidney damage. Okay. Then let's talk about the post-renal acute kidney renal damage or injury. So then we have the ureteric obstruction. Urethra is the one which brings the urine from the kidney to the bladder. So if there's a stone, tumor, fibrosis anywhere along the path, it will cause the kidney injury. Then we have the bladder neck obstruction because of the prostate, because of the drugs or tumors or stones. So all these will cause the injury. Then we have a urethral obstruction with the similar causes. Then the last one, which is very, very important, is the renal. I have told you already that the renal damage will happen in the glomeruli or in the tubules or in the interstitium or in the vessels. Now let's see what happens in the glomeruli. In the glomeruli, you will see there are so many causes. Like if you open the Robbins book, there are around 20 causes of systemic diseases, or sometimes you can say there are 10 to 15 causes of the inherited mutation in some of the basement membrane, in which there is an antibody formation and it goes and destroys the antigen inside the basement membrane of the glomeruli. So with the result, there is an injury to the kidney, especially to the Bowman's capsule. I hope you remember that there's a Bowman's capsule. The glomeruli is inside the Bowman's capsule, and there's the afferent and the efferent vessels. So those are the vessels which get destroyed in all these autoimmune conditions and any immune conditions. So what happens is, You remember in Goodpasture syndrome, there's an antibody which is known as anti-GBM antibody, which goes and acts against the antigen in the basement membrane of the glomeruli. With the result, the glomeruli are damaged. Now, this antibody is very smart. It goes and acts against the antigen inside the lungs also. So, this Goodpasture syndrome patient will present with hemoptysis and kidney failure. Okay, so this is one of the causes I'm just saying. Second is ANCA, glomerulonephritis, which happens in vaginous granulomatosis, Churg-Strauss syndrome. I just now mentioned microscopic polyangiitis. So these have antibodies like ANCA, C-ANCA, P-ANCA, which causes the kidney damage. And sometimes the antigen-antibody complexes are formed in the circulation itself. Okay, so there is some antigen inside the circulation in the blood, let's say some bacteria, and antibody is formed against it. Okay, so antigen antibody is already formed in the circulation. Now they will go and get deposited inside the glomerular wall basement membrane. So with the result, there is injury to the kidney. This is very common in the post-infectious glomerulonephritis. Then we have the cryoglobulinemia, or the primary membranous glomerulonephritis, or lupus. Lupus is SLE, which is a very common cause of the kidney damage. Okay, so like this, if you list out the causes of nephritic and nephrotic syndrome, you will see so many diseases which goes and act against the glomeruli. Then we have the tubular. Tubular, I've told you already, it is ischemic or toxic. Ischemic is when there is no blood supply, tubular damage will happen. There will be hyalinization of the tubular wall lining cells, and with the result, tubular damage will be there. Then we have a toxins. Toxins is when you see the pigment inside the kidney, which happens in most commonly in intravascular hemolysis. What is intravascular hemolysis? There is a release of the hemoglobin in the circulation because of the lysis of the RBCs. This hemoglobin will go inside the glomeruli and they will try to damage it, because this is not the pigment which the kidney or the glomeruli are eligible to filter. So that's why there's a damage. Rhabdomyolysis, muscle damage, myoglobin will go and destroy the glomeruli. Then we have the crystals, so many crystals. Ethylene glycol is a very common crystal which is seen in the kidney. Then we have all the antiviral drugs, everything, they are causing the damage. Then we have the drugs like the aminoglycosides, lithium, amphotericin. So all these anti-chemotherapeutic drugs all causes the damage to the tubules. Then we have the interstitium. Interstitium is drugs. Drugs, especially the penicillins, NSAIDs, proton pump inhibitors, sulfonamides, all these antibiotics, antivirals, they all will cause the damage to the interstitium. Sometimes leukemias, lymphomas will go and deposit themselves in the interstitium, so that will also cause the damage. So what are the clinical features? In acute renal failure, you will see anuria or oliguria, decreased or no cardiac output. There will be a pain, flank pain. Flank pain is a pain to the side. Edema, hypertension. Okay, so edema, why? Because there's a less oncotic pressure in the circulation. Okay, and then the fluid will go in the surrounding tissues. With the result, there will be edema, hypertension, and sometimes the patient will be asymptomatic and it will be measured with the serum creatinine, urea, and the BUN levels. Okay. So as usual, the diagnosis I've told you already, and even on the peripheral smear you will be able to see some Burr cells. Okay, and ultrasound also will show some damage, and serology will help us to find out what is the cause of the acute renal damage, if it is SLE or what type of antibodies is there. Sometimes HPV and HCV viruses which affects the liver, the antibodies will be born against them and they will go and affect the kidney. Anti-GBM, CKs, creatinine kinase, thyroglobulin, myoglobulin. So all these are the ones which helps in the diagnosis. Even in the urine analysis, when you get the sample in the laboratory, you can see, if you see the microscopy, they will be all crenated, and sometimes they will be casts will be seen, RBC casts, WBC casts, and fresh RBCs. So all these are the things which helps us to differentiate. Sometimes you can see eosinophils and interstitial nephritis, so which also can tell us that there is some drug which is involved in interstitium. So these are the indices which were used before in diagnosis, but now I'm telling you that serum creatinine is the most reliable marker, followed by BUN, and then the ratio of BUN by creatinine, which is 20:1 in the pre-renal causes. Okay. Now, how do you differentiate between acute and chronic renal failure? In acute, we have a short history, chronic, we have a long history. I've told you before. Hemoglobin concentration is normal in acute and it is low in chronic because we are losing the blood in the urine. Then, renal size is normal and it is reduced in chronic. Renal osteodystrophy is present in chronic. Peripheral neuropathy is present in chronic, and serum creatinine will be so high that it is without dialysis the creatinine level will not go down. Okay, so we'll get into a little details of the chronic renal failure, and we will see why the chronic renal failure happens. Now, CRF is a long-standing progressive deterioration in renal function which is there if it is more than 6 months. There occurs a derangement of the excretory, metabolic and endocrine functions of the kidney. So it is not only the oliguria and everything now, it has affected the metabolism and all the sodium, potassium, everything is deranged, and endocrine, all the hormones also are deranged. And when end stage renal disease is reached, the patient become dependent on renal replacement therapy to avoid life-threatening uremia. Okay. So uremia is, what is uremia? Uremia is a consequence of chronic renal failure. So it is a clinical and a laboratory syndrome reflecting dysfunction of all the organs as a result of untreated or undertreated acute or chronic renal failure. So if you don't treat it properly, so uremia will happen. Now, before I get into uremia, you should know about the causes of chronic renal failure. Now, causes can be congenital or the inherited diseases. Polycystic kidney disease, medullary cystic diseases, tuberous sclerosis, or congenital obstructive uropathies. Okay, so these are the congenital which are acquired during birth. So these are the causes of CRF, congenital causes. Now we have the glomerular causes. Primary, as I've told you, there are so many causes from post-streptococcal, MPGN, membranous, FSGS, RPGN. So these are the primary glomerulonephritis in which antibodies go and act against the antigens in the glomeruli, or antigen antibody complex is formed in the circulation and they get deposited inside the glomeruli, which causes the damage. Now, secondary, I have already discussed hypertension, diabetes and SLE, and sometimes TTP, thrombocytopenic thrombotic purpura, are the ones which causes and damage to the kidneys. So vascular diseases, I have discussed, if it is hypertension, it will definitely affect the vessels. So these are the vascular diseases. Then we have the interstitium, drugs, toxins, and sometimes the lymphomas or the malignancies are the ones which get settled, and even the tuberculosis gets settled in the interstitium. Okay, and then the urinary tract obstruction, calculus, tumor and prostate, or tumor of the prostate, all these are the ones which causes the urinary tract obstruction. So what happens? So when there is a long-term reduction of the renal mass, there will be vasoactive molecules or cytokines which are being released. So they will cause the hypertrophy of the surviving nephrons as an adaptive mechanism. So which leads to the sclerosis, and there is a decline in the distal function of the kidneys. So there are 3 stages. One is the early stage, then moderate, and then severe disease. How do you define it clinically? Early stages, kidney function is normal, GFR is normal. Okay, moderate is in which GFR is 30% of the normal and urea and creatinine is increased. Severe is less than 30% of the normal, uremic clinical manifestations will be there, and then uremic clinical manifestations are quite heavy for the patient. So I have a slide on that, I'll talk about it. Or sometimes then the GFR goes less than 10 to 5%. So it is very difficult to survive without the hypothetical support. So deterioration is, I have already discussed. So what happens when this deterioration happens is a disturbance in the water, electrolyte and the acid-base balance, accumulation of nitrogen waste, urea, creatinine and BUN, which leads to azotemia. There is the products of metabolism of the uremic and the amino acids, and then there is a accumulation of the uremic toxins, and the patient will have the typical uremic breath and the sweat, which will be like swelling, smelling like urea inside the circulation or also on the skin. So what are the clinical abnormalities? We have the fluid and the electrolyte balance. There can be hypernatremia, kalemia, acidosis, phosphatemia and calcemia. So all these are the ones which happen secondary to the chronic renal failure. These doesn't happen in the acute renal failure. You should know that. So metabolic disturbances are happening only in the CRF. Now we have the endocrine abnormalities also are happening in CRF. We have read about the table before. I will talk about it again. So there will be a secondary hyperparathyroidism. Okay, more parathyroid hormone, what will happen? More calcium from the bones will come to the circulation, so hypercalcemia. Then we have the vitamin D deficiency. Then we have the intolerance of the carbohydrate metabolism. Then impaired gonadal function, because all these hormones will prevent the gonadal function. So in the GI we'll have uremia, GI bleeding, hepatitis. In hematological we have the lymphocytopenia, bleeding diathesis, infections and hypercomplementemia. And how about the urine analysis? What will happen? So depending upon the cause, if it is nephrotic syndrome, what you will get is proteinuria, more than 3.5 grams in 24 hours. Okay, if it is nephritic syndrome, glomerulonephritis, you will see hematuria. Okay, so urine microscopy in the lab, what you will see? You will be able to see RBCs, WBCs, eosinophils, CAS, granular CAS, red cell CAS, depending upon the underlying pathology. Then you can do a 24-hour creatinine clearance, which we do it in biochemistry. Then urinary electrolytes and osmolarity is another indication for the same thing. Then you can go to the serum also, and you can check out the electrolytes in the serum to find out how much is the sodium potassium imbalance has happened. Then radiologically you can see, then CT scans and renal biopsy will also see. So what are the complications? What do you see in the complications? Number one is anemia. Now you know that erythropoietin is being secreted by the kidney. Now when there is erythropoietin deficiency, obviously bone marrow is not getting the stimulation to produce more amount of RBCs, and RBCs are getting destroyed because of the uremia, so there will be a blood loss. Okay, RBC destruction will be there, and because of the uremia there will be so much of disturbed absorptions of iron, B6 and B12. Then the number two complication is renal osteodystrophy. Because of the impaired renal function, there will be less oxygen. Okay, and also because of the less oxygen, there will be a hypoxia, and with the result 125 cholecalciferol vitamin D dysfunction will happen, and because of that there will be stimulation of parathyroid, so hypercalcemia, and the bone will be resorbed, so bones will become weaker in chronic renal failure. So in the young people, there can be osteitis fibrosa cystica or osteomalacia or something like that. Okay, so how do you manage the patient? You identify and treat the underlying cause. Okay, you attempt to prevent further renal damage, look for reversible factors, attempt to limit the adverse effects and institute the RRT. Alright, so what is important is that you have to understand the causes of ARF and CRF. You have to understand what happens, what is the difference between them. Okay, what are the lab diagnoses which I have spoken between them. So I'll just focus this picture again. Now history in acute is short, in the chronic it is long. Hemoglobin concentration is low in chronic, renal size is less in chronic because there will be a contracted and shrunken kidney because of the less function or destruction of the kidney. Then renal osteodystrophy will be present in chronic, peripheral neuropathy is present in chronic. Then serum creatinine will be irreversibly high, so it may not be reversible in the chronic. So dialysis becomes an important part in removing the urea, creatinine and everything. Alright, so in the exam you will get a question on what are the differences, how do you define them, what are the causes, and what is the lab diagnosis. So I've told you everything about it, what are the complications of chronic renal failure. So please go through it, and I'm sure you're a smart student and you will get back to me if there is any other problem. Thank you.